changing your life one story at a time. This is the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast with Editor-in-Chief Amy Newmark.
Hey, it's Amy Newmark. I'm back from my 1-week staycation, and I have to say it was great. I had never done that before, stayed home instead of going somewhere, but I had so much stuff to clean up in my house and in my parents' house. So even though I worked really hard all week, it was also relaxing in a way, just knowing that I was getting something done. And I also managed to walk 3 miles every day for 9 days in a row, so that was really excellent too. Of course, the whole week I was also watching what was going on with the hurricanes. And that's what I want to talk about today, how they bring out the best in us. It's been so interesting seeing how these awful hurricanes, Harvey, Irma, Jose, and Maria, have changed how the media talks about America. We went from constant coverage of divisiveness, most recently the white supremacists in Charlottesville, to coverage of Americans from all walks of life helping each other in Texas, and then Florida, and then in the Caribbean. And who knows where next, given how active this hurricane season has been. So I've been thinking about a wonderful story that Stephen Rusiniak shared with us in our most recent book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, My Kind of America, with the emphasis on kind and America. Stephen lives in an area that was particularly hard hit by one of the more famous hurricanes of recent years, Hurricane Irene, back in 2011. Irene did a number on the New York area where Stephen lives. Stephen's home was okay after Irene, so he set out to volunteer and help his neighbors who weren't so lucky. He went to a local church that had been turned into a volunteer command center, and there he saw meals that were being readied for hundreds of flood victims, and he saw people scurrying around filling boxes with donated items or picking up tools and buckets to go out and help with the cleanup. Stephen ended up joining a team that was given the job of removing drywall and insulation from a home that had been flooded. As they drove to the home, they saw a disturbing sight at house after house, on street after street. The contents of entire homes were piled curbside. Stephen felt so bad for the family that his team helped. He felt like they were intruding on the family's private despair. But then he realized the family didn't feel that way. They were so grateful for the help from these strangers, and that made Stephen want to do even more. So day after day, he volunteered, and after the cleanup was done, he switched to delivering meals to people in the devastated areas. He said he was surprised by how many of those people declined their free meals and asked that the meals be delivered to other homes in their neighborhood instead, to people that they deemed needier. Stephen's wife, Karen, also volunteered, and she was having the same kind of experiences as Stephen. They talked about how it felt, and they realized what had happened. As the days had gone on and they got to know all the families they were delivering to, those families switched from being hurricane victims to them to being their friends. And Stephen concluded his story by saying, "Following Irene, my little team served more than 1,000 meals to those in need. No, wait, we served more than 1,000 dinners to friends." And that's why he called his story Serving Dinner to Friends.
The Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast continues straight ahead.
Chicken Soup for the Soul celebrates your pets and the power of the human-animal bond. I'm Robin Gansert, CEO of American Humane and host of the new podcast from Chicken Soup for the Soul, Loving Animals. Every week, I'm joined by celebrities and other special guests who share a passion for spreading care, hope, and compassion for the world's unique species. You'll hear inspiring stories of animal rescue and rehab, plus the latest trends in animal welfare. Chicken Soup for the Soul presents Loving Animals with me, Robin Gansert. Available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, or anywhere you download your favorite podcast.
Robin Gansert's podcast, which you just heard about, is all about loving animals, which is what she does as president and CEO of American Humane. American Humane is a nonprofit organization that Chicken Soup for the Soul supports in many ways, including with royalties from our books about dogs and cats. Recently, Robin's been talking on her podcast about all the rescue efforts that American Humane has undertaken in Texas and Florida, and the thousands of animals that they have helped to save and then reunited with their families, or if those animals were already in shelters, they've helped find them new homes. American Humane also distributed more than 100,000 pounds of Chicken Soup for the Soul dog and cat food that we donated to feed all those dogs and cats while they're going through this difficult period. So that made me think about another story that we have, this one about the 2005 Hurricane Katrina. The story is by Bradford Swift, and it appeared in our book called Chicken Soup for the Soul, Volunteering and Giving Back. Brad was a former veterinarian, and so he listened with great concern to all of the horror stories about the thousands of pets displaced by Hurricane Katrina. He says he woke up in the middle of the night and he felt that he had just heard a message, go help the displaced pets. So the next morning, Brad searched the internet and he found that a team of volunteers was assembling to drive down to Gonzales, Louisiana. They were leaving in 3 days, so Brad's teenage daughter Amber started helping him collect much-needed supplies and food from local animal hospitals and grooming parlors. Brad filled up a whole van with donated pet food and medical supplies, and then he drove down to Gonzales to an exposition center where 1,200 displaced pets were being sheltered. He had been warned that it would be chaos, it would be disorganized, that there was no housing for the volunteers. They all had to figure things out for themselves. And then as Brad was driving, he heard about another hurricane that was approaching Louisiana, Rita, and he wondered if he was making a mistake driving right into another hurricane. But then he thought about all of those supplies that he had in his van, and he knew that he had to keep going. When he got to Gonzales, he joined a team that was taking dogs and other animals, including chickens, to a nearby prison where the inmates were going to help care for them in the prison's barn. The team spent 4 days eating the prison food and bringing order out of chaos. They got the animals' medical records updated and accurate. They gave medical attention to the animals that needed it. They got it all set up so that the inmates could carry on caring for the animals after they left. And Brad slept in his van each night, including one very scary night when Hurricane Rita arrived in town. During those days, Brad assigned himself a special role. He got all the donated pet toys out and he played with the dogs. Those dogs needed that extra attention and the normalcy of playing instead of just trying to survive. When the team was done, Brad left, but on the long drive home, he realized something. He wasn't actually done. He had found a new purpose in life. And when he got home, he set to work on making sure that those dogs really would end up adopted, not just euthanized at some later date. He connected with the Animal Compassion Network, the largest no-kill nonprofit animal rescue organization located in western North Carolina. They were receiving shipments of displaced pets from the Gulf states, including animals that he had probably cared for down at that prison. Brad had discovered a new passion, one that continues to this day. Thanks for listening to the Chicken Soup for the Soul podcast today. If you want to hear more about these books, Chicken Soup for the Soul, My Kind of America, and Chicken Soup for the Soul, Volunteering and Giving Back, go to our website, chickensoup.com, and click on the button that says Podcasts. You'll see all the books that are featured on this week's podcasts, and you can click on them and read some great tips from them. And then come back for our next episode when I'll be sharing a couple of stories from our brand new book, Chicken Soup for the Soul, Dreams and the Unexplainable. We're going to talk about how you can use the messages in your dreams to dramatically improve your life.